So the gender budget allocation this year is 2.23 lakh crore rupees, and from that 6 crore rupees, which is 0.002% of the gender budget, is
Yeah.
allocated to the SMILE, which is Support for Marginalized Individuals for Livelihood and Enterprise program under the Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment.
Yeah.
So what is your first impression of this budget that has been allocated?
No, my first impression was that it has worsened over the period of time, because I remember in 2021 or 2022, the total amount which was given to the Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment, the MOSJE, which are responsible to also directly work with the transgender communities. By the way, I don't recall the year, but then it was in 2021 or 2022, the total amount which was allocated to the MOSJE was around 12,000 crore, and then within that amount, only 5 crore was spent for the transgender individual, especially the SMILE project, like the Garima Greh and the other scholarship programs, etc. So that was kind of like 0.04%. So I remember working on a piece saying that every 100 Indian rupees that the government of India is spending, only 4 paisa actually is going to like the trans population's empowerment, and upliftment. Now it's like you say 0.002 percentage, right? So it's like in every 1,000 rupees Indian government is spending, only 2 paisa is coming to the upliftment or the sustainable development of the transgender populations in India. So which also is showing the priority has been worsened over the period of time, right? So so that's my first priority. I mean, it has become worse, only worse.
Right. So that's really interesting, because overall from the outside, it kind of seems in general that the government is kind of increasing the attention that it pays to the transgender community. But firstly, can you tell me a bit about what is the SMILE program? Because, if you look into it, it doesn't just say transgender people, it says transgender people and people who are involved in begging. And if you in the gender budget statement, if you actually look up the word transgender is not there anywhere. Where the SMILE allocation is there, under that also it kind of mentions people involved in begging. It does not really mention transgender people.
Yeah.
So can you tell me, when this budget allocation happens, do you know how do they decide how much is going to go for transgender people, or this other section of people who are begging for their livelihood? How does that work? Do you know?
See, the problem with any scheme such as SMILE, name it like a SMILE, any scheme, the problem is that when the ministry or when the particular ministry actually is trying to draft the particular scheme or develop a particular scheme, they normally do not do much research on what are the needs of the community at this point of time, right? So the similar thing happened also with the SMILE scheme. So the ministry was much more, interested in quote unquote rehabilitation project. Where they wanted to work with population who are involved in begging, not sex work, but then begging, and then other traditional professions such as like badhai and launda dance, etc. And most of them are of course homeless. Most of them of course needed some kind of assistance to find a secure and safe space to or a shelter to also start their life with mainstream professions at the same time. But I don't think that the SMILE project talked anything beyond the quote unquote rehabilitation program, because under the SMILE scheme, the Garima Greh also came. Across India, there are multiple Garima Grehas. But then I don't think that the government or the ministry, while defining or while developing the scheme, they thought anything beyond the rehabilitation program and talk actually about wage employment, actually about the livelihood. And then I'm not too sure whether, I mean, that would be a right analysis at this point of time. But then looking at the government's priority, I think any government, I mean, like be it the union government at this point of time in India, or be it any state government, say the government of West Bengal, they would like to get rid of people who are begging on the street, right? So that's exactly why there are like separate schemes for people who are begging on the street, people who are into begging, etc. And then since transgender and then the quote unquote hijra population come with that particular come under the begging, so they would also like to like include them while talking about begging, because if they just say that okay, we wanted to work on the beggars, but then they don't identify or acknowledge that okay, trans people are into begging, then the objective of the scheme would actually fail, right? So I think that was more of that than directly working with the trans population. Yes, a certain section within the ministry. I mean, like for example, we have now NISD, which works directly with the ministry at this point of time. There are individuals, there are officials at this point of time who are super sensitized towards the needs of trans population. But then when the scheme was actually primarily drafted, that was probably in the year of 2020, 2019, I think they didn't think much beyond rehabilitation program, right? Yeah. So that's what happened at this point.
Yeah, so when you're saying rehabilitation program, like I just want to clarify, like because of my curiosity, is when you say that they're thinking about rehabilitation but not exactly employment,
Yeah.
what does that mean? Because like how can you get rehabilitated if employment is not a part of that?
I think that talking about livelihood and wage employment, that needs a lot of more research. That needs a lot of more introspection. What we can do, we need to understand the ground reality. For example, there are multiple schemes. I mean, like. Before Smile, different government, including the government of West Bengal, they tried their level best to also quote unquote rehabilitate trans individuals. Right. For example, the government of West Bengal once declared that they would be also hiring trans individuals as a civic volunteer, the civic traffic police or whatever. Some of them also have this small program where they, like they provide them with the sewing machine to, like to work on that. But I don't think these are the real aspirations of trans individuals, right? So when you're talking about trans individuals, rehabilitation program or employment or livelihood, you need to think beyond, or you need to think Zara Hatke from the women empowerment, right? But then the point is very simple, that when you're talking about the women empowerment, when you're talking about the women-led self-help groups, I mean, which actually work really well in the rural parts of India, like cooperative bodies which are functioning fantastically, like across India. But then we also have to acknowledge that the earning that the women making from this self-help group, from this work, are not the primary earning of the family member, right? India is still a patriarchal society. I mean, like they don't really expect the women of the house to earn money, right? That's not, I mean, like even if the women of the house are earning more than the men of the house. So we have to understand that there's a fundamental difference between the women self-help group and then the scheme that should be developed for the trans individuals. You possibly cannot just replicate the model which have been there, functioning fantastically, like for women. You cannot possibly replicate them for the trans individuals. You need to think Zara Hatke. You need to understand their aspirations in life. What are the skills they already have? I mean, like that should be a starting point. That's what I feel, right? So I think that the most of the government made a mistake regarding that, and I'm glad that I'm part of this NIRD PR project where we're actually looking into the aspirations of trans individuals and what are the actual needs of trans person, and then based on the needs, based on the lived realities of the trans individual, then accordingly the programs shall be developed, the schemes shall be also developed, right? those trans individuals who are living, who are part of the Garima Greh, they are actually been provided with training programs in different sort of training programs at the same time, that has been happening. But then we have to also understand, we have to also analyze the retention rate. Some individuals might say that, look, people are actually finding jobs, right, in the corporate, in the private sector at the same time. But then, what are the retention rate? That is something we need to also understand. In West Bengal, there were two transgender nurses, couple of years ago. There were a lot of media coverage around two trans individuals being appointed as nurse in one or two of the private medical, private medical facility in the city, right? But then, have they been able to retain their job? That is something we also need to ask. And then just because there is some corporate guys are saying, okay, yeah, if you train them with the nursing courses, I'll be able to hire them, blah blah blah. Are we also understanding whether trans people, those who have been hired as the nurse, have been given training as nurses, are they actually wanting to become a nurse? This is something we need to also ask, I feel, right? Trans people can be also part of the Manrega scheme in the rural parts of India, which has been happening, right? Manrega is one of the biggest rural employment generation schemes, and those who are a part of the rural parts of India, why can't they also work there, to generate some sort of wage employment, right? So when talking about rehabilitation program plus livelihood, then I think we also need to understand first that what are the real ground realities, what are the problems. Can a trans person, so for example, you can start giving them sewing machine, right? But then how many trans people also have this financial capital to, to invest and to start a tailoring business? And then even if they start a tailoring business, how many people would be coming to her, or how many people would be coming to them to to do some sort of work, right? Also, the women, women in a particular locality, since that is not their primary source of income, they can afford to make the price really low, right? But then can a trans person who is the primary earning member of her life, and I know since I've been working with them, after trans person starts working, they also have to pay to the family members to quote unquote buy acceptance from the family, right? Because they have been devoid of acceptance, family love, and then since they have been devoid of that, they aspire to be loved, they aspire to be accepted, right? And then in most of the cases, once they start earning money, the family immediately start accepting them, right? So they have to also pay to their family members to quote unquote buy acceptance, to buy love, right? So they cannot afford to just do sewing machine wala work, right? So are we giving them enough capital? Are we giving them enough resources that they can transfer, they can turn this whatever training they have been given into livelihood? I think the answer is no, right? So yeah, so that's my answer.